What is up? Welcome back to the Jeremy Awakens podcast. Today, we have a very, 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 very special guest on the show. Somebody that I've tried to get on the podcast for probably a couple years now. Someone who has built an empire, transformed multiple industries, and is now dedicating his life to service and making a real impact in the world. David Centner is a self-made entrepreneur, investor, and philanthropist who built and sold a multi-million-dollar company that revolutionized toll technology in the US. But instead of just retiring and enjoying the wealth, he chose to dedicate his time, his energy, and resources to something far greater, reshaping the future through education, wellness, and conscious leadership.
That's awesome.
You like that intro?
That's really nice. Yeah. Very, 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 very. 4 varies.
Yeah.
Nice to be here, Jeremy.
Really grateful to have you.
Trying to get me on here for a while.
I'm like sweating after reading that. This is probably the most nervous I've been for a podcast. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot of people that know you for the success you've created in the business world. But I feel like there's far fewer people who know about the journey that it took to get there. And that's really what I want to touch on today. And if you could just take us back, because there's very few people who I feel like are genuinely self-made, who built so much abundance from literally a foundation of nothing. And I feel like you're one of those people. So can you just take us back to your childhood, what your home was like, and some of those struggles that you faced early on in your life?
Sure. I don't share my story very often. I am completely self-made. If you could see my household growing up, I like to characterize it, the bullet points of verbal abuse, physical abuse, terminal illness, suicidal behaviors, not mine, somebody close, poverty. It was just a very, very crazy house, very crazy. And I was a good student. I was a good student. And around the age of 10, at the age of 10, I got my first job, and that was the stereotypical delivering newspapers for the Miami News. And I loved it. I loved making money, and one thing led to the next. And then at 12, I got a job as a dishwasher at the International House of Pancakes right around the corner, who thought I was too young, and I said, at the time I knew the law, and I said, no, I'm old enough. And they said, if you can come back and prove that you're old enough, then we'll give you a job. So I went to the school, I got whatever documentation I needed, I came back, and they gave me the job, and I worked there. Eventually, I got promoted to busboy, and then short order cook. So I was actually, making the omelets back there. By the time I was 16, I had 4 jobs simultaneously. I worked at a very famous pizza place called Frankie's Pizza. It's on Bird Road. We're here in Miami, Florida. I'm from Miami, born and raised. I'm the one. And so by the time I was 16, I had 4 jobs. I was making money, bought my first car. It was a 1975 AMC Matador. I bought it for $1,000. And I found that making money was my ticket to get out of my house, basically. I'd like to say, I wish I could say that all of my drive, all the fire in my belly is from, I just want to uplift humanity and make the world a better place. But I can say that now, but at the time it was just get the fuck out of my house, and anything to get out of my house. And I found that I was really good at making money, and people would give me more and more responsibility, and then I could buy clothes and look nice and just basically take care of myself. I eventually got into a very good business school. I went to the Wharton School of Business, a lot of scholarship, and I majored in entrepreneurial management. So I actually learned, that was what I studied, how to create businesses. And I remember one of my classes, the topic for discussion was, where are you going to get money for your business that you want to create? And everybody's hands were going up, get a loan from the bank, and the professor just shot it down. You don't have collateral. No bank is going to give you money if you have no collateral. Venture capital, And back in the day, VCs wouldn't be interested in you if you just had a basic idea. Now times are a lot different, but
Right.
which is weird. I still have a hard time getting my head around. You can come up with a beautiful PowerPoint and somebody will value your company at $10 million. You haven't done anything. But back in the day, if venture capitalists would not be interested in you if you had no experience. And ultimately the answer was friends and family. And I'm like, I'm fucked. I don't have any friends or family who have any money. I don't know how I'm going to ever make this happen. And then, we can go into all the details, but basically I just put it one foot in front of the other, one brick at a time, one mini success after the next, and eventually started having some success. And then, and I had my first real success at the age of 26 when I started my first internet company, which was in 1994. Okay. So that was like over 30 years ago. I started my first internet company.
Okay, so we'll circle back to that first success at 26. I want to go back to your childhood though.
Sure.
Because we touched on it, but it was very short. I want to know if you're open to sharing. Was it both your mom and dad that were being abusive? And I'm curious to know, like, how did that affect you in a way? Interacting with other people, like your classmates? Was it something that you sought support for, or was it something that you kind of just internalized? Because it sounds like you used all of the chaos as your fuel for just getting out of the situation and creating a completely new reality for yourself because you knew you didn't want to perpetuate that toxicity. So I'm curious to know, like, going back to the 7-8-year-old version of you, how did that look? Like, how did a typical day look like in your life, coming back from school? What was it like for you?
You just go right to the heart of it, don't you?
I
knew we were getting vulnerable.
I think it's important to actually paint a picture because, again, there's a lot of people that would be in your shoes and they would play the victim and they'd be like, listen, I was dealt a really shitty hand and I'm destined for failure. I'm destined for addiction. I'm destined for abuse. And I'm just going to ride that wave. And you took the completely opposite approach. That's why I want to go deeper.
So a lot of fear. I was just scared out of my mind because I didn't know at any time if there was going to be some fury around me. It was both my parents and my sister. So there's bullying as well. My mom was a very unpredictable woman. She could fly off the handle for the smallest thing, and there'd be maybe some physical ramifications for that. My father, who was terminally ill from the time I was 5 to when he died when I was 15, because he was disabled to a certain extent. He was a very creative inventor, which I got that from him, but he would use that to make devices. So do you know what a fly swatter looks like? Of course. So imagine a fly swatter crossed with the mud flap of a truck.
Okay.
On the wheels. He created like an industrial strength fly swatter so that if I misbehaved, he could, swat us with this thing. And it was just a house of, like, I was constantly super scared. Layered on top of that, my vision is very poor. I wear contact lenses, but my father, ironically, was an optometrist. And back in the day, when he went through his training, he was taught, I don't blame him for this, he was taught that if you underprescribe a kid with their glasses, their prescription, then it should stabilize their vision. It didn't work. And because my vision from 5 when I got my glasses progressively got worse and worse and worse till I was 15 when I got contact lenses. So the reason why I tell you this is because I couldn't see shit, man. I couldn't see. If you were standing 15 feet away from me and you just waved and didn't say anything, I wouldn't quite be sure who it was. When in the classroom, I couldn't see anything. So I had to have every year, every class, awkward conversation with the teacher. Excuse me, Mr. So-and-so, I can't see. Can you sit me in the front row? So I felt ugly. I was scared. I felt very alone. I had no place to go. There's resources today that exist that would have been great, that would have served me quite well for children in the situation that I was in, but I had no place to go. My aunt and uncle's house was equally nutty. So I just felt really, really alone. And I could have turned out pretty bad, and I definitely have my moments in my past of delinquency, and I don't know, I think God has a greater purpose for me. And I now am able to look back at all of those experiences as a gift, believe it or not. And it's shaped me to become who I am today. And so in a backward sort of way, I'm really kind of grateful for all of that. I got there. I got to that place.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to kind of reprogram and have a unique perspective on that whole scenario, that it actually was the catalyst that helped you become the version that you are now. You know, I think about like the twin brothers who are born to an alcoholic father, and one of them goes on a path of becoming an addict like his dad. And when they ask him why, it's like, because my dad was. I was just following my dad's lead. The other one never had a drink in his life, and they asked him why. He's like, because I was watching my dad. I saw how destructive and abusive he was with the alcohol, and I knew I didn't want anything to do with that. And you took that second route. I'm curious to know, do you have any sort of relationship with your sister or mom now? Are they around?
My mom passed about 20 years ago, and I don't have a relationship with my sister. I would very much like to have a relationship with my sister, but it's not happening at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So you go to Wharton Business School at Penn. You have some success there, and then 26, you launch your first internet company.
Yeah.
This is like right at the boom of Silicon Valley.
I mean, I'll tell you how I got into it. So I was introduced to these guys that had a graphic design company. They were doing brochures, basic stuff like that, but they were also doing some really clever things on floppy diskettes.
Yeah.
And for a very brief period of time, people were putting their promotional materials on these discs, and you would, instead of giving somebody a business card, you would give them one of these discs, and you would go back to your office, you'd load it up on your computer, and you'd point and click, bounce around screen to screen, and learn about that person's company. This is pre-web. And I saw this, I'm like, that is the future. That is the future of information and commerce. There's something here. And so right around that time, in the summer of '94, I saw an article in the New York Times about these 4 guys from MIT that had just conducted the first secure transaction on this thing called the World Wide Web. And I'm like, what is that? And I got in touch with them. I don't remember how I did, but I got in touch with them, and I drove up to see them. I was living in New York at the time. They had a house in Nashua, New Hampshire. They were working out of a house, and it was just a bunch of hardcore programmers, and they needed somebody to help them do all the graphics, all the interfaces for the stuff that they were doing. And so voila, we now became one of the world's first web developers. I literally could count on one hand all the web developers in the world. And so we started building websites super, super early and charging a lot of money because people thought it was rocket science. And my partners were very talented, and we got huge clients like America Online, IBM, Bell Atlantic, MCI.
And you were building out their websites.
Yeah, Toys R Us. We did Toys R Us first.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And who was doing the client reach out? Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then word spread because we were starting to get a lot of publicity. So there were a lot of articles that were being written about us, and it was fun. I was only 26 years old, and we grew like gangbusters. And I took that company public when I was 28 or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So at the age of 28, I think it was 28, I was the chairman and CEO of a publicly traded company, and so I was worth something finally. This wasn't a gigantic IPO like we have now, but at one point that company at its peak was probably worth about, $60-70 million. And so that was my first taste of success.
What ended up happening to that company?
So what happened with that company was I saw a bubble coming, and I felt that we should diversify our services by not just doing websites, but also more traditional stuff like brochures and radio spots and TV, and we had all the talent to do that stuff. And I had a difference of opinion. I had partners. There was a board, and I wanted to go left. They wanted to go right, and I just knew that. And I was outvoted, and so I knew I needed to leave. But it has a happy ending, because while I was at that company,
I love happy endings.
Yeah. While I was at that company, I had started yet another company. So that was success number one. While I was at that company, I incubated another company. So we were one of the world's first sellers of ads on the internet. So,
wow.
Yeah. So all those ads that you see everywhere, we were one of the first companies to build that creative and sell those ads and place them and buy media. We're a media buying company in the internet world. And we had sold that company to another company before they went public. That company was called 24/7 Media. They became pretty big, but we sold it to them before they went public. And so at a discount to their eventual IPO. So I left my company, and the sector of the other space, 24/7 media space, took off. People really started to pay attention to the media buying world, and people who were in the know knew that my company had a big position, a big holding of that other company, because they gave us their stock. And as a result, my company, which was also public, started to soar. And as an insider, you're not allowed to sell your stock, but as long as you've left the company for at least 6 months, you're not an insider any longer. So my company started to soar right around the 6-month mark, and then I just started selling my shares every single day. So I had a really, really nice exit, partly because of the second company that I incubated, allowed me to fully exit from the first company.
And you're like 30 years old at this point?
I was about 30, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to go back just because it's so ironic that you were born with really poor vision with your eyes, right. But like your greatest gift is actually your vision to see trends happening and to really jump on them early. And it's just an interesting paradox, you know?
Yeah. I've been told I can see around corners. I think I do have a good sense of like what people want and what they need before most of the world, catches on. And I think that continues to this day. And we'll talk about my current projects as well. I think some of our projects that we're doing now are really way ahead of their time, and my timing is going to be perfect on some of the stuff I'm doing today.
Yeah. So you're 30 years old at this time. You've already had 2 successful exits, essentially.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're probably like financially set.
Not for life.
Okay, but you're like, this is more money. I'm curious to know, by the way, when you had your first exit when you're 26, and you have all of this money that you've never experienced before.
The exit from the first didn't happen until I took the company public, which was like 28, 29, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were 28, 29 when you first received a big lump sum of money?
It doesn't work that way. I took some money off the table when we went public, but then most of my assets were tied up in stock.
Got it.
Okay.
But compared to where you came from.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm curious to know, like, how did you first handle that?
It was thrilling, man. I remember with my first wife having a conversation about like, what do we do? We can now order like dessert when we go to a restaurant. Like, it's like really dramatic.
Yeah.
You can get a bottle of wine. And I went and got a BMW. It was so stupid. I didn't even negotiate. To this day, I feel shame. I went in there and I just wanted to buy a BMW. Didn't even negotiate and walked out with a BMW. I felt like an ass, after that. But I learned humility also along the way.
How old were you when you first got married?
26.
26.
Yeah.
Wow, a lot going on at this period of your life.
Yeah.
What was your day-to-day grind like while you were building these companies? Were you also, because now you're someone that's like a pure embodiment of health, in vitality. You're 59 years old.
Pure is like really pushing it.
No. But seriously, like you're the energy, the way that you show up, you have a very elevated vibration. You would never think you're 59. Okay. And health is such a big pillar for you now. I'm curious to know, was it also important for you as you were building, or were you just like 18-hour days grinding as you were building those companies?
So I very consciously decided I want this. I like this romantic notion of the grinder who doesn't care about his health and then makes a lot of money and then revisits his health later down the road.
Got it.
And that's what I did. And I just got fat and sloppy. Oof. And I didn't exercise at all. And I felt horrible getting out of bed in the morning. And it was just a dumb decision. But I was grinding it out, and there's also a previous version of me, so I wasn't as connected or present as a human being. I had young kids. I wish I could do things over again, in a different way. My marriage fell apart. I had a heart attack at the age of 41. I might have shared that with you. Yeah. No damage. I was not the picture of health, and I had very little knowledge of health and wellness and mindfulness until more of my recent past. So I thought a healthy meal option was the egg sandwich at Dunkin' Donuts, for example. And I know
egg whites too.
Yeah, the frittata, whatever. Yeah, I know you're cringing inside.
Yeah. All the seed oils, the gluten, the glyphosate. It's okay. It's okay.
I thought that was actually a pretty healthy option.
Did you start to experience happiness after you had these successes, or was it kind of a mindset of just like chasing the next thing?
I was not a happy guy. I was just chasing money and just trying to get by. Happiness as a pursuit didn't really come to me until much later in my life, after my big exit, after I had a very large exit.
Yeah. And then going back to your first marriage, was that something, because I think a lot of times, we attract what we are, right? So chances are you're 26, like you haven't yet done a bunch of the personal spiritual work. So my guess is you're going to attract someone from more of a state of fear. And like you came from a place where you didn't really have much love growing up. So I can only imagine like connecting with someone where you actually feel that level of love and support. Can you talk just a little bit about that marriage, that process? Like what was the thing that really attracted you to that person? And then like, how did that evolve and eventually dissolve?
Yeah, so there's a lot of physical attraction, and very attractive woman, and we had a lot of fun. In the early going of the relationship, without kids, it's all good times. And then once the kids are introduced into the mix, I think that we had different ideas, different values of how we want to raise them, and that I think that was the beginning of starting the rift in our relationship. But that being said, we were together for 17 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah, 19 together, 17 married. So we were together for a pretty long time.
When do you feel like you recognized the misalignment?
Very early on. We saw 4 different marriage counselors since over the course of 17 years. So probably like 13 of those 17 years, we probably were working on it.
And was the reason why you didn't separate earlier because you wanted to do your best to stay together for the kids? What was the motivation for just continuing to try to make this work after 13 years?
I don't really subscribe to staying together in a marriage for the sake of the kids. I think that's kind of a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because I really think that kids should learn to model. You should model for kids love and healthy, functional relationships. Staying together, I mean, you're just perpetuating something that's bad. You're normalizing a dysfunctional relationship, and then what's going to happen? They're going to go and continue and get the same thing. And so I imagine, my parents did not have a beautiful, loving relationship. My ex's parents were, loved them, but they were very, in my opinion, unhappily married for over 50 years. And then,
wow.
Yeah. And then the grandparents, I don't even know how far back it goes, the dysfunctional marriages. So I didn't stay in it for the kids. I stayed in it because I'm just a fighter. I'm just tenacious. I just really wanted it to work. That's all.
You brought that same perseverance. I'm going to get this shit done at any cost. I'm going to make it work. You brought that kind of similar mindset to the relationship.
Yeah. But I'm also, I know that I own my stuff too. I'm in there. It's 50-50 the reasons why it's not working. So, and as time goes by, I still get even more perspective on it. Like what was my contribution to this? So I roll my sleeves up and, I'll get to work. And when I met my current wife, Layla, who has been on this show, I knew right away, literally on our second date, she was very committed to her own personal development and working on a relationship, and so am I. I'm very deeply committed to my own personal development and my relationships. That is beautifully sustainable, And now she and I have a great perspective. When we first met, we were less than ideal. Also, we were not as evolved as we are today, and only because of this tenaciousness and this commitment to ourselves individually and to our relationship that it's worked. That we stayed together and we got through all the rough patches. And now it's we rarely ever. I can't remember the last time we fought. And
probably when you do so in a very conscious way.
We're highly trained now that when we're fighting and triggered, that we look within first. Like, why am I triggered? Why is this really rubbing me the wrong way? What's going on with me?
Why is this happening in my movie? That's one of the things that we learn in Kabbalah is asking, why is this happening in my movie? Mm-hmm. Why is this situation happening? Why is this person showing up in my life? There's got to be a reason. And our tikkun, which is kind of like our soul's repair, is these consistent triggers that show up. And rather than getting reactive, taking that time to pause and actually go inward, okay, wait, what is the lesson that I'm learning about myself in this moment?
Yeah. I remember Layla and I had a fight, 8 years ago. I was so triggered, and she just stopped and she said, "What's going on?" And I just melted. I just started bawling. She nailed it. It was me. It's all me, It's never them. It's always us. Our gurus, they don't get triggered and fly off the handle. They get triggered, but the difference between them and us is they recognize it so quickly that the duration of it and the intensity is greatly reduced. Normal human beings like us, we could be pissed off for days,
right?
And blame it on the other person, be victimized. So I'm more highly trained. But anyway, back to my first marriage. It was we manifested each other for sure, no question. And there's a lot of beautiful stuff that happened in that marriage, and I'm very grateful for it. And I learned a lot from it. And it was definitely a big part of my path in life, no question.
Yeah. There's so much uncertainty, I feel like, between the masculine and feminine right now. And we live in an era where there's actually more women over the age of 30 that are not childbearing. So you're seeing a lot of women raise kids by themselves, not have kids at all. The family dynamic, especially the last decade, seems to be under attack, especially from the woke left. Okay. And I was telling you before we started recording that I think there's very few models for people like myself to look at and be like, oh, wow, that marriage actually looks like a very sacred union. It looks like they genuinely love each other, see each other fully, support each other through the highs, through the lows. And now that you've had both of these relationships and you're currently in this beautiful marriage with Layla, what advice would you give to me Like the version of yourself that is stepping into that path. Maybe like, are there 3 lessons or what questions can we ask ourselves to really gain clarity on who the most aligned partner is for us?
Oh gosh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Layla is an exceptional human being, you know. So she's extraordinarily bright and a great visionary, and I could just go on and on about her. And I'm extraordinarily attracted to her as well. I think she's really beautiful. So with her, she's like a thoroughbred racehorse to me, and the best thing that I can do for her is to hold space for her. If we could all learn to hold space for each other a little bit better and have patience for each other and recognize and acknowledge that nobody's perfect and learn to fall in love with each other's idiosyncrasies, you know, I think we would have much healthier relationships. And just showing up for people, being fully present.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I try to do. And that's, I mean, you
said a big green flag for you early on was the fact that she was so committed to her own personal growth. Because so often in relationships, I feel like we get dependent on each other. It's like, you are responsible for my happiness, when in reality, it's really just a game of both of us doing the work to become whole and complete, and then us coming together and creating like this unbelievable expansion, you know, which is what you guys have done, and you guys complement each other so well too. So early on, so like before going in, like what are some other green flags? You see what I'm saying? Like you recognize early on, wow, this woman is super bright, intelligent, and she's dedicated to continue improving herself every day.
Yeah. I think from a man's perspective, and that's all I can really contribute, to find a woman who is really independent and who could hold their own and take care of themselves is, I think it's really, really important. Because otherwise, you have to look for things that are sustainable. So I think that's really where you're going with this. So a relationship will be very sustainable if each party is personally working on them, dedicated to their own personal development. If each party is committed to, knows how to take care of themselves and keep their head above water. I think it's also important, if you plan on having kids, that you witness the other person in the proximity of children, you know, and ask tough questions and really go deep on that kind of stuff. Because if you're not on the same page with the child raising, that could be very challenging for a relationship if you're not on the same page. And other things like food, nutrition, taking care of your physical well-being.
Yeah, you guys are both obsessed. Layla's probably even more obsessed than you, but that's also coming from her own struggles with Lyme disease, right? And like, I feel like you guys are just on such a crazy trajectory with your own health. Like, you guys are probably more attractive now than you were when you met each other.
Thank you.
You know what I mean?
So.
And I don't know how you looked when you guys first met. What is, you mentioned something that's really interesting, right? Which I feel like is also a paradox. There's this duality, because you said one of the things that you really loved about Layla was that she's so independent, right? And I feel like over the last decade, the last 20 years, we have this rise in boss bitches, right? Like the feminist movement kind of projecting to women that like, you don't need a man. You're all good by yourself, right? And don't get me wrong, there's something beautiful to that. Like, women are just as capable as men are, sometimes more capable when it comes to business because of their emotional intelligence. They can do anything a man can do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they should do everything a man can do, because that completely throws off the polarity between the masculine and feminine. And I know we've had this conversation in the past. She's so driven. I don't think I've ever met anyone to Layla's extent where she is just like nonstop with all of her projects, and it's coming from a place of love, contribution, passion. Like, you guys could easily just completely disconnect from the world and just buy an island and never talk to anyone ever again. Mm-hmm. You guys could easily do that, but you don't choose to because you guys genuinely are passionate about making an impact, which is what I admire most. But my question is, that's a tricky balance to navigate sometimes, right? Because she's so driven. She's working so much. And it's that polarity of like, how do you make sure that she's also staying grounded in her feminine as well during that process? And I'm wondering if that has caused any tension in your relationship.
So everything you say is so spot on, other than you said in the past 20 years. It goes back a lot further than that. So I'm older than you, and I remember really well in the 70s when these ideas were first being born about how men should get more in touch with their sensitivities, and women would serve them well if they embraced their masculinity, especially in the workplace. And I think that started a long march to where we are kind of today. Layla, as she probably shared with you, had no dad at all, like zero. Not even, did she share that on?
Yeah.
Yeah, she had like not even one day of a father, and so she was raised by a mother. And when she entered the workforce, she just turned on her alpha, and she did really well. She worked for a huge accounting firm, and she did really well. And when we met, she eventually came to work for my company as the CFO, and she was so alpha in my office that she was like leaving bodies on the floor, like blood on the floor, making people cry. And to her credit, I think she, during her own spiritual awakening, she learned that the feminine is just so powerful. It's way more powerful, in my opinion, than the masculine. Because the feminine can get any other woman to do work for them at a high level, and can get any man to do work for them at a high level. So she learned to find her feminine power and use that first, and keep that other stuff in the back pocket. When you really need to rip somebody's head off, to hold off on that. You may not need to use it. The feminine might actually get you where you need to be. And so today she's a very, very strong, very balanced leader who's in her feminine almost all the time, which I love. It's a very beautiful thing for me. It's very attractive. For my part, I grew up being very sensitive. My nickname in college was Sensitive Dave. Every now and then Layla will call me that. And I tell her, well, it's a compliment. Thank you very much, because I can feel things. But it's just like a running joke. Yeah. But yeah, I was overly sensitive, and I learned we got way more in touch with my masculinity, my warriorhood. When it's appropriate to take that out, and because some people, they need to see it. Otherwise they're going to walk all over you. And so our relationship has evolved. I think a way more masculine person when I first met her, and she's a way more feminine person than I first met her. We continue to evolve as leaders, and so maybe what you're witnessing, what you see with us is, and the story's not over. I think I don't know what my future brings, but I'm hoping even more masculinity for me, more warriorhood, more success, and for her the same thing. So now I think we're stepping into our power, our true power. And the polarity issue, I like to think that it would be great if we can turn back the clock to the simpler times where men are men and women are women. And this woke stuff is just a progression of literally like 50 years. It took like 50 years to get to where we are, where it's like crazy to me, where men can play sports with women, and men could use the female bathroom. It's like, this is nuts. This we've gone way too far.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that with our new leadership in America, that we're going to turn back the clock a little bit, where let's find that polarity again, because I think it's really good.
Yeah. Well, it was so crazy, right? Like in Trump's first couple of days of office, he literally made a statement. He's like, and I officially announced that there are only two genders. And part of me is like happy.
Was that an executive order?
Yeah. And part of me is like happy that we're restoring normalcy in our country. And then the other part of me is like, how ridiculous did things have to get to where the president of the United States even has to make a statement like that,
right?
That there's only two genders.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, you've been around a little longer than me. So just the fact that there was, in going back to the feminist movement, right? Where were the feminists when we had biological men competing in women's sports, stealing away gold medals from women who have trained their whole life to get to this point? Where was the feminist movement when we have biological men hanging out in women's restrooms? I just don't understand how an organization or a group of people who has the backs of women can allow women to be put in such spaces that are sacrificing their safety. And that's what those things were doing. And it's crazy, man, that we got to that place. I'm glad. Thank God, like truly thank God that we're returning back to normalcy.
Yeah. I think that I was wondering the same thing. Where are all the women who fought so hard for their rights and privileges? Why aren't they standing up for themselves? And I think that it's because of cancel culture. They were afraid to speak up for fear of being shadow banned or deplatformed, which is a nice segue to my podcast, Erased, which is all about cancel culture, bringing people on to share their stories of cancellation, and because they didn't have a voice. And now they have a mouthpiece to come on and share their journeys, their emotional journeys of friends and family that they lost or gained along the way, and how bad things got because of this era of cancel culture that I like to think we're emerging from, and people are sick of it and don't want to see it anymore. So that's the purpose of our podcast, is to get people on to share their stories.
I can't wait. I'm actually coming on, I think, next week or in 2 weeks. It's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll link to the podcast. We'll link to, it's called Erased.
Erased with an exclamation
We'll link to
mark.
it in the show notes, so definitely check that out. I'm curious because speaking of cancel culture, you're starting to become more and more successful, building accolades, building wealth, becoming more and more attractive each and every day. Was there ever any experience that you had where any scary scenario where you had to deal with like someone really trying to take advantage of you for your money, for your wealth? Because another thing that happened these last 10 or 15 years was the Me Too movement. And we saw so many successful men being accused and attacked for different things, many of which never actually happened. But our society was programmed to believe everything that every single woman says. And it was unfortunate because I think a lot of men got thrown under the bus who weren't necessarily guilty of doing anything wrong. Now, of course, there's absolutely terrible things that dudes do, but there's also terrible things that everyone does, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to know, like, did you ever have to navigate anything challenging regarding that?
Well, not Me Too, nothing like that. Thank God. I've never done anything like that. But you bring up a good point. Anybody can accuse anybody of anything, and because the media and social media is rigged in such a way just to be titillating, to attract attention, that's what they're going for. So one of the guests on my podcast is Alan Dershowitz, the world famous attorney who has represented all kinds of people, good, bad, and otherwise. And he was accused by Jeffrey Epstein's accuser of wrongdoing by her. And he's like, what the hell? I don't even know this woman. I've never met this woman. And but the media picked up on it, and next thing you know, he's losing all his friends in Martha's Vineyard, and he comes on and tells his story. Things got really bad for him until she said, "Oh, I made a mistake. It wasn't you. I got you confused for somebody else." But the media doesn't report on that kind of stuff. So it's heartbreaking. For me, so did Layla share the story about our school and the aggressive stance she took with the COVID vaccine and all that?
We definitely talked about that.
Yeah. So that we had 2 rounds of that kind of controversy, and that was a cancellation attempt on her twice. It didn't work, but it really put us through the ringer. That was a global media crisis that we had to deal with, and then I had been working concurrently on a deal with the city of Miami where I was going to donate $10 million to build a sports dome facility for the community, and my school would get some privileges to use it non-exclusively, and it took me about literally 4.5 years to wrap this deal up. And out of the blue, nowhere, the commissioner, who was the champion of this project, and the lobbyist, which we had hired to help make this deal happen, both got arrested. And they got arrested because the commissioner apparently was taking some campaign contributions from me in order to prioritize my project. At the end of the day, all charges were dropped. But when the media learned that it was David Centner and Layla Centner, their campaign contributions that were, perhaps potentially the reason for the prioritization, we were never accused of any wrongdoing. In fact, we were witnesses for the prosecution, and we were very cooperative. We became, I think the media tried to do a knockout punch on us, and they're like, we weren't able to kill them during the COVID stuff, but now we really got them on the ropes. And one media publication in particular was very, not just unfair, but incorrect in the reporting, which painted us as kind of like criminal in a way. So you haven't heard the last of the story. So it's sort of like Alan Dershowitz, he was unfairly accused of something. Not unfairly, when it's incorrect, when there's no basis for it, that's like the worst, a massive injustice. So yeah, to that extent, even right now as we speak, I don't know what percentage of people in the community of Miami think that I'm a kind of a bad guy, which is like so not who I am. I went from pillar of the community. Layla and I were in one publication painted as Miami's most philanthropic power couple.
Yeah.
To there's something in the newspaper this week that says that the Centners are as dirty as dirty can be, something like that. Like mind blowing, just mind blowing, because I wanted to give a donation, based on a donation to the city of Miami, that got swept up in somebody else's scandal. So yeah, so I'm dealing with that right now, Jeremy.
I'm sorry, brother.
No, it's cool.
But
I'm good.
But I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, because like the one thing that you and Layla both have in common is just you guys have literally transformed all of your obstacles into massive opportunities for expansion and growth. Like, I already know that something greater is going to evolve from this taking place, but it's interesting how people will attack other people, specifically people who have created success, impact, wealth, notoriety, and just assume that money is the root of all evil, or these people had to do something shady to get to where they are now. And it's all coming from their limiting beliefs. It's all coming from their own projections, their own insecurities, their childhood trauma, and it's projected onto you. And I feel like this has just trained you in the process of like really letting go of anyone's opinion of you. Because at the end of the day, you know who you are, you know what you're about, and the people who are close to you also know that too. Like, if you spend any amount of time with you guys, you are able to see you and see you very clearly. So yeah, it's shitty, but it's always going to happen. I feel like it's part of getting to where you are now. Like there's no way to create the amount of abundance and success that you've created in your life without ruffling some feathers along the way, without triggering some people along the way. Because as you continue to evolve into this next version of yourself, you're going to trigger and anger and upset everyone who's still operating at a lower frequency and vibration. And that is sometimes one of the most difficult parts of this spiritual work, is understanding that as you continue ascending, and doing the work, there's going to be some people in your life that aren't necessarily cheering for you.
You know, you bring up a good point. When we were in these hearings for this thing with the sports dome, the school board, who they laid claim to this property, they thought they should have it instead of for the sports dome. So the entire school board came out, all these teachers, all these parents from this other school came out, angry, on fire, and at us because they thought we were super dirty, and it was very surreal. And I'm thinking, my mother worked for the school board for like 40 years. She worked in the very building where all these people are working themselves. I'm a product of the public school system. I'm just like you. I'm as humble as you guys are, and you're vilifying me, because we're successful. It just didn't make any sense. And I've learned a lot through this. So I guess I found some compassion. Perhaps if they were more in touch with their own triggers and they get to know us better, instead of consuming a narrative and just flying off the handle, then they wouldn't be so reactionary. There's an old expression, there's an old cartoon from New Yorker magazine. There's a dog sitting in front of a computer, and it says, "On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog." And so I don't know if you've seen this before. It's famous. It's very famous from the early days of the internet. But people have a worse side to them. They do. And when you can be anonymous, even better. They the worst side of them can come out. I don't have such concerns about what people think of me, but some people can actually hurt me and make things really bad for me. So this whole situation actually has impacted me greatly because I got deplatformed from my bank with a relationship for decades.
Deplatformed from your bank?
Yeah, there was one of my investments was seeking loans from 3 banks. Those 3 banks said, "Oh, the Centners are involved in this. We're not interested." And for my future things, probably it's impacted my ability to get high-level investment banking or venture capital or whatever it is that I'm going to need, all because of faulty reporting. And not to mention, there's people out there who think I'm a scoundrel, which is it's hard to digest but everything is here to serve me. There's a reason for all of this, and I think, to your point, I'm not lying back or rolling up in a ball. I'm meeting it head on, and I intend to make lemonade out of lemons. And I don't know what that looks like, but I have my mojo on it, and I feel really peaceful and happy and confident.
Yeah. You know what's the most frustrating thing about it all, David, is that there's just a lack of accountability, right? We can play the 3-minute montage from the media attacking Layla in Centner Academy, right? It was CNN, it was the Washington Post, it was literally all of these mainstream outlets calling Layla the worst names possible. And literally all she was doing was standing up for the children. That's all she was doing. She's like, I don't want the kids at our school to suffocate wearing masks that actually aren't doing anything to prevent this virus that's not even affecting children, right? I don't want the teachers to get vaccinated because I fear that could actually project onto the children, right? Both of which were proven true. And those people who were bashing Layla never had the decency to say, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry about that. We were wrong, and you deserve an apology. And that's the world that we're living in now, where you can literally just be a keyboard warrior. You can talk a bunch of shit behind a screen and not be held accountable. And it's a little disheartening, but I think we just need to continue doubling down on the truth because all of the lies are being exposed. How crazy is it, Dave, that we have Kash Patel leading the CIA, we have RFK leading the HHS, we have Elon with Doge, we have Trump back as the president. All of these guys
and the House and the Senate.
Yeah, we were absolutely vilifying these people. And now they're actually the people that are creating the biggest impact and bringing America back to greatness. Are you ready to feel limitless in 2025. I'm talking limitless physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, financially. This is your sign to try out microdosing for 30 days. We have a very special opportunity for podcast listeners. You can get started for only $222. This includes the medicine being shipped to you, the highest quality, fair trade, organic, sustainably sourced microdoses in the world at your doorstep. And you also get access to live group coaching calls with me, our private community. This is your sign to take ownership of your life in 2025. If you're ready, hit the link in the description, and I can't wait to see you on the inside. That are creating the biggest impact and bringing America back to greatness.
I agree with you, and I'm super excited and optimistic about our country's future. But by the same token, there's people who are deeply unhappy about all the things that you just said, and they're going to double down on that too, and do everything they can to obstruct and prevent what we consider to be progress. They think is not going to be progress, and people are trying to get in the way.
But it's so clear that whatever they're doing is not working, because you literally have. And this isn't like a political podcast, but these are important points that I think relate back to just the human experience, right? You literally have some of the most prominent people on the left that are completely disgusted by the Democratic Party, whether it's Joe Rogan, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, like all of these people are now some of those most powerful voices for the right. And that's because the left just got so woke. Again, we spoke about what they're doing. They're putting tampons in boys' bathrooms. They're allowing biological men to compete in women's sports. They're trying to tear apart the family dynamic. So we're just seeing the truth win. And that is the future in 2025. So these people can be upset. They can be triggered. But it's very clear that these triggers are their own projections of things that they haven't healed in their personal life and experience, because it really just comes down to common sense.
I'm hoping that more than a few are waking up as well, that the last few years have been really like weird and surreal. And now when these truths are coming out and changes are being made, I'm hoping that people realize what the heck was that? That the last few years, that was really weird with COVID and the wokeness and the open borders, and people maybe
waking. Oh my gosh, the open borders.
Maybe people are waking up more than a few. The vaccine didn't work. We really tried to hurt people who were not aligned with us, and instead of tolerance, listening to other people's perspectives.
You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a super spreader.
Yeah.
All of these things.
Yeah.
I'm curious because what I've learned in my short experience in the entrepreneurial space is that you can't be overly emotional. If you are acting from emotion, oftentimes that can lead to not the best results in terms of interacting with your team, in terms of making decisions, right? And you seem like someone who's just very grounded and very calm and collected. And I imagine that was one of your superpowers when navigating in the business world, because a lot of people are just making decisions based off triggers and emotions. And relating that back to the political spectrum, I genuinely haven't heard anyone criticize Trump for his policies. It's all been emotional. Oh, he's a misogynist. Oh, he's arrogant. Oh, he's an asshole. Oh, all of these things that aren't based on truth or fact. They're clearly just based on emotion. So I think we're returning back to logic in America, which I think is very important. And I'm curious, relating this back to like a business conversation. What were some of the most important skills you had to cultivate within yourself after these first two exits you had, right? And then moving on to the big company that you built?
So the concept of a complete picture?
A complete picture, like a complete picture.
No, like a complete pitcher is somebody who has
A complete pitcher, like in baseball.
In baseball,
Like curveball,
exactly.
fastball. Okay.
Yeah, curveball, fastball, slider, changeup. I think there's a fifth, and
Knuckleball.
no, I don't think. I don't
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
And after my first couple exits, I realized that I don't have all the skills. You know, I'm not particularly good at or like the operations or accounting. I like strategy. I like the creative side of things. I like the marketing. And if I want to ever like really achieve all of what I'm capable of, then I really need to get at least passing knowledge of every aspect. So I really threw myself into learning. You know, I could probably take over as a CFO of a medium-sized company if I needed to, you know, and the things that were, I could be a COO, a chief operating officer of a, large company if I wanted to. So I'm pretty good at everything, and I really wanted to become a complete pitcher. And then as far as my leadership skills, that's evolved much in lockstep with my spiritual path. Most people think that a workplace is where you should lead by having fear, by instilling fear, that people will work harder for you, rise to the occasion if there's fear. I don't believe in that. I believe in more of a heart-led management, and I think that serves me really well, because I believe if people are aligned with the vision for the company and their values are they just to do the right thing, and they want to be treated with respect and dignity, and they like to produce, and they like responsibility, then that is going to make for a better workplace, and people aren't going to be stabbing each other in the back and jockeying for position. We're going to treat our customers better. We're going to treat our suppliers better. I believe in 360, treating everybody really great. You know, let's say you're my supplier of, I don't know,
Latex?
internet cable. What?
Latex?
No, like internet cables,
Okay.
you know, and my servers go down on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm not your biggest customer by far. Maybe I'm like your 30th largest customer. Because I've been treating you so well as my supplier, and I call you up like, Jeremy, I got a real big problem. You're going to drop everything, you know? But if I've been kind of a jerk to you, you know, all along, like, you'll get to me on Monday morning, you know? And so that's the kind of leadership that I think I have now. You'd find a lot of similarities amongst the people that work for us. If you come to our annual party, where we bring in everybody from all of our companies, it's almost as if everybody knew each other already, because everybody's sort of like, vibrating at the same frequency. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, that's also something I noticed, like whenever you guys are, even we talked about this Layla and I, all of this backlash was happening at Centner Academy during the first 18 months of COVID. You know, there were teachers that left, there were some parents that left. And in that process, what actually happened was really beautiful, because you guys literally attracted your tribe. You had families. I remember being at your house for like the new parents get together and I was having conversations. There's literally people that moved from other countries to attend your school. That is unheard of. That is literally unheard of. I remember talking to this beautiful couple, like I think from Chicago, and they're like, yeah, we just literally moved everything to bring our child to this school. Like that just doesn't happen. And it's just
for a school. Yeah.
It's a really powerful reflection that when you actually stay grounded in your truth, yes, you're going to trigger people. Yes, you're going to lose people. But in that process, you're also going to attract your tribe. You're going to attract your soul family. And it's a beautiful reflection of like what you guys created. I can also relate to that during my journey of like, wow, I haven't shared some of these things with you, but like, I mean, getting banned on TikTok at 1.4 million followers, have the account back now. My TEDx talk.
With your followers, they reinstated all your followers?
Yeah. It's just like we've had to work to get the, because my every video would get a lot of views. in the past. And now it's like we're gaining that traction back. So it's building up. But even like I've just had so many, my YouTube channel got taken down, never got that back. We're rebuilding it. TEDx. I gave this amazing TEDx talk on the power of psilocybin for mental health. Never got distributed. I've never even seen the talk. So if you have any connections at TED, let me know. I've been trying to get a hold of them for a long time.
You worked hard on that.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
This is still like causes me, it's still it's one of those things like how we say everything's happening for you. And it's like we find the silver lining. Man, it's really hard with that one.
It's like, how do we keep our peace when all this stuff is happening to us? That's the biggest challenge. When the world is taking a shit on you and you have every right in the world to be super angry, how do you stay peaceful? And I think when Layla and I were experiencing all the controversy with the school, like first order of business, we got our spiritual advisor on Zoom and just like meditated and just tried to get peaceful. And that gave us the clarity to make really good decisions that were not fear-based or anger-based from a suffering state, from more of a positive state. If we hadn't done the spiritual work, we probably easily would have gone straight to anger and lingered in anger for months, perhaps. And we most definitely would not have attracted anybody throughout the world to come to the school because we wouldn't have been resonating with them. We wouldn't have been vibing with them. And so as these bad things are happening to us, serving us, how do we find our peace? And I'd like to think that Layla and I are pretty good at it. And when things there will be more bad things that happen to us in the future, but we are more equipped to stay in a peaceful state or reduce that intensity and duration of the suffering state, like I just discussed before, so we can make better decisions, operate from a better part of our brain.
Yeah, you're very good at that.
I think so.
You're very good at that. So I want to just circle back because we never even shared actually how we first initially connected. It was like 2021 retreat in Mexico. And I was sitting across from you and Layla. It was probably day 5 of the retreat. I don't think we had spoken the first 4 days. And I just remember opening my eyes and seeing you guys directly across from me. And the way that you were just holding Layla and you guys were just like teenagers. You guys were like giggling and laughing and just like fully surrendered to each other. It was so beautiful to witness. And I had to acknowledge you after. I was like, yo, man, I know we haven't really spoken much this entire trip, but I just want to acknowledge you because that was like so amazing for me to witness, really, and it's just been cool to kind of be on that journey and witness you guys in that process. And that's one of the things that I really do see in you fully and admire is like your ability to just stay grounded through the highs and through the lows. Like I would have never thought you were going through all the shit that you went through, that you're currently going through based on the demeanor you have now, and I think it's a good time to transition to the last 7 or 8 years of your journey since that's when you guys exited, right?
7 years ago, we exited. Yeah.
And that, correct me if I'm wrong, that's really when you guys started to go really deep into the spiritual work? Or were you doing a lot before?
No, that 6 years ago, almost to the day, was when I started my spiritual work.
So after you had the final exit, okay,
yeah,
which was the big exit.
Yes, I'll share what that was. You know
sure.
what that company did or does?
The toll technology, right?
Yeah. So I developed some innovation in the electronic toll collection arena, like Easy Pass, SunPass, Fast Track, depending on where you are in the country. And it was for fleets, primarily rental cars. So if you rent a car and you can pay for your tolls electronically, either through a device in the windshield or they take a picture of the license plates, I developed that innovation, software, hardware. I have a patent portfolio and
what was the moment that triggered that idea? It seems like such a random thing to just think of.
I know it's a little out there. A friend of mine was telling me a story about how he went to go pick up his friend at the airport one day, and my friend was in his car, and his friend was in a rental car, and they were approaching the Easy Pass toll plaza, and my friend was able to go straight through because he had an Easy Pass transponder, but his friend was stopped, and he was sharing the story with me, and we were like, why don't they have Easy Passes on rental cars? And so I was in between entrepreneurial gigs. I was looking for my next big thing, and I liked the space of RFID, radio frequency identification. That was kind of a hot thing back in 2002 when I started that company. It was being used for continues to be used for all kinds of things, for inventory control, for opening the gate to your garage when you approach with your car, for access control into an office. So I liked that space. I thought it was going to, and so it checked that box for me. And then I looked into am I allowed to do this? Do I have to get permission? And I learned that I could just do it as long as the the toll authority gets paid for their tolls. Then they're happy. So I started it. I wrote the code myself in my attic, and 16 years later, when I sold it, we had 4 million cars that were driving around using my service, and I had almost the entire industry.
And it was 4 million rental cars?
Yeah.
It seems like some of these ideas that end up being so massively successful, they seem so simple. Because like the technology already existed, right? Because the fast track, Easy Pass, but they weren't present on rental cars. And you're like, just why aren't they there? It seems like a no-brainer.
Exactly, yeah. And it solved a lot of problems because at the time, people were just flying through the toll plaza, so they were getting violations, and the violations would go to the registered owner. In this case, it was the rental car company, and it was all paper-based, so literally boxes and boxes and boxes of unpaid tolls were accumulating within the industry. Everybody's unhappy, I guess, and the driver is, I guess, the happy one because in order to assign the liability to the driver, you have to go through all kinds of stuff, filling out papers, sending it back to the toll authority, then reissuing the violation directly to the guy who rented the car, hoping that they send in a check for the amount of the toll plus the violation fee. It was a big mess. So with my solution, it just, all of a sudden, every single toll gets paid, guaranteed, because I'm going to take responsibility for it. The driver gets to fly straight through without having to worry about a violation, and it's a new source of revenue for the rental car company. So it was like
everyone's winning.
Everybody's winning. Yeah,
that's a good lesson to learn. Like you created a win-win-win for everyone involved. I'm curious because right now in the state that we're in, like rental cars are still part of the equation, but with ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft, I feel like, and they also have the daily rentals you can do. It sounds like you capitalized off this opportunity at the perfect time.
The rental car industry is not as hurt by rideshare as you might think.
Okay.
There's still quite a lot of demand at airports and off airport. You'd be surprised if you're a business traveler and you're coming to town for some business meetings, and there's sufficient parking at the office buildings where you're going to, you'll rent a car, and drive yourself around. It's way easier than waiting for a car to show up when you can just hop in the car and go where you need to go. So it hasn't actually been dinged as much as you would think.
Okay. Based on your business experience and the success that you've had over the last 3 decades, how much of your success would you credit just pure vision, execution, as opposed to timing and luck?
It's really mostly vision, seeing something, see need, fill need, easier said than done, and execution. A lot of people have ideas, but they're clueless of how to get started. They have no idea.
Yeah.
And even if they did know how to get started, there's definitely going to be bumps in the road. It's guaranteed. Every single company, the biggest, the best run companies in the world, all have existential incidents. But you can get better at that. Seeing things that other people don't see. I feel like I I'm pretty good at that. I'm a creative guy at heart. I'm a creative person. The ability to execute is a learned skill that we can get better and better at, and I continue to get better at. So it's and luck. The way I feel about luck is if you're working hard and you show up and you're present, when luck strikes, you'll be in the right place. But if you're not showing up, you're not present, you're not working hard, the moment that luck, God gives you a little bit of luck, and if you're not there, you didn't get lucky. Luck happens to those who show up.
What role has God played in your success and your journey?
I mean, I feel very, very connected to, call it the divine, to God. I feel really, really connected. I feel I'm happier. I'm a pretty happy guy, mostly. And I think that happiness, that peacefulness I'd like to think, is resonating on others in such a way that they feel safe with me and they could rise to become the best version of themselves. And that could only help in my business ventures, is the type of leadership that I want to bring. Is that an appropriate type of leadership for everybody or every industry? Maybe not. Maybe not for a truck dispatcher company, but for the types of businesses that I'm trying to build, which is trying to improve humanity, in ways large and small, and make profits, so that I can scale and do more of it. I think that it begins with me and my peacefulness and my confidence and my connection with God and my deep, profound appreciation for God, I think allows me to be the best leader that I can be.
Yeah. And what's your mindset about, I think one of the valuable things that you can teach is the mindset around money. Because obviously there's the old adage, money doesn't buy happiness. And you hear all the time about people who are massively wealthy and successful, but they're fucking miserable because they neglected these other areas of their life. They neglected their health. They neglected their relationships. They neglected the relationship with their children, right? So yeah, they've created all this external success, but internally they still feel empty. But you have really done just a magnificent job of cultivating this wholeness within yourself that isn't attached to all of the things you have or the things you've created, right? And I think you're also a beautiful embodiment of like money being a magnifier, money just revealing who you actually are. If you're an asshole when you have no money, you're gonna be a pretty big asshole when you have a lot of money, right? And if you're a kind, compassionate person when you don't have anything, imagine when you actually accumulate wealth, what you're gonna do with that. And I feel like I'm inspired to create more wealth when I see what you're able to create with it. Because I'm like, yo, David could be spending his money on all types of shit that doesn't actually impact anyone else but himself. But so much of your time and energy is actually dedicated to enhancing the consciousness of the collective. So what is your mindset around money now that you have a limitless amount of it?
So when I sold my company, I was a little bit lost, and a lot of deals were coming my way, mostly from men. As you know, men tend to connect with each other by doing deals together, and there's no shortage of them. And it just wasn't doing it for me. I had no passion for it. And I knew something was wrong, and that's when I embarked on my spiritual journey, where I learned to heal and bring awareness to my conditioning and really understand who I am and find my real happiness. And then in the hopes that my mission my purpose in life would arise from that. And it did. And my purpose in life is to build projects that are highly profitable, that bring joy and love and community together. That's what I really like. That's what I really dig.
Say it one more time. It's a beautiful mission statement.
My mission in life is to bring people together in the spirit of joy and love and connection and happiness. So even if it's just for a brief moment, just people get together and I can observe and be witness to like connection and love and peace, I just get my jollies out of that. I just dig that. So all my projects are kind of like fill that criteria. Layla's mission is quite different from mine. I don't know if she got into hers. Hers is more about healing the world and educating the next generation. And so they're kind of compatible, actually. So our projects, there's like several of them that we have in Miami, attract kind of the same community. If you're interested in love and connection and joy, there's probably a good chance you're also into health and wellness and and like biohacking and that kind of stuff. So so as far as money's concerned, we still live in a country where the streets are paved with gold. I love hearing stories of people who come to this country that don't have 2 nickels to rub together and became really successful. Because I have no patience for anybody who is like, woe is me, I can't make any money, I don't know, the system's rigged and it's unfair and all that. It's not. You still, to this day, you can come here with nothing and have tremendous success and abundance. And the best way to do this is just work, there's jobs out there. Like I like to tell people, and it's the truth, if all of my stuff was taken away from me tomorrow and I needed to live in a cardboard box under a bridge, but I was happy, would I be okay? Yeah, because I'd be happy. I don't need all this stuff. So I really think the most important thing is to find your happiness and operate from that foundation. Find your peace, resolve all of your stuff, your childhood traumas, and then find a mission and purpose in life, and then go from there and make some money. And it's out there for the taking, in this country anyway. I can't say the same thing for other countries. And then that's where you want to operate from. And if having a lot of money is what you want, then you probably have to get a little more creative. But if you want to be happy, happiness should come first. That's my opinion. And then start from that foundation.
Where did you notice maybe, I think there's like a study that shows like after you make a certain amount of money, like the happiness that's created doesn't really fluctuate. But like if you're paycheck to paycheck, it's hard not to be operating from a fearful state, right? Because like financial stress is real. I think 65% of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck and they can't even afford eggs right now. It's fucking $12 for a dozen of eggs. You know what I'm saying? So for those people, which is a majority, by the way, that are in a state of fight or flight all the time, they're just trying to get by. They're just trying to provide for their families. How can they elevate their happiness and joy even if they're struggling financially?
It's easy for me to say, because I'm not in that situation, thank God. But I have been in that situation, and it's terrifying. I've been in that situation where I didn't know how I was going to make my next, mortgage payment, or rent, or provide for my kids, and on fumes. I know the feeling. But it's easy for me to say, but you don't want to be operating from that part of your brain. If you're in the fight or flight part of your brain, then you're not going to be making the best decisions. So you've got to somehow get into the other part of your brain, the executive function area, where you're peaceful, and that is when the ideas come. That's when God speaks to you and tells you what you should be doing. And you can't hear God. You're not making the best decisions if you're operating in the fear part of your brain. So get out of that part of your brain first. I get it. Eggs are super expensive. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. I don't know. I have all kinds of financial issues, but set it aside. And there's a lot of ways to get to that peaceful place through meditation. There's lots of ways to get there. Get there first, and then it recedes. You go back into your fear again. Bring it back, keep bringing it back 6 times a day if necessary, because that's when the answers will come.
Yeah. No, it's great advice. And I think oftentimes people, I've invested so much into my own personal growth over the last 5 to 10 years. And there's been many moments where it was challenging because I was like, okay, I'm kind of struggling right now. Is it worth dropping 6K to go to this thing and expand myself? And ultimately, it was those decisions where I invested in myself that allowed me to amplify my trajectory and become just a more expansive version of myself. And I think sometimes people are so resistant to actually just invest a little bit in their health and personal development.
Well, let's talk about you for a little bit. Because you do this work for others. You provide a platform for others so that they can do some healing and introspection and find their happiness and peace. And it's beautiful work that you do. I've experienced your work firsthand, and I know that you're doing some amazing work with people and transforming their lives. And then there is a price tag to it. But at the end of the day, you cannot put a price on resolving your stuff. You can't.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the space I'm operating in, is really understanding. And all of this work has allowed me to realize, again, this wide spectrum of people, whether you're a pro athlete, a successful entrepreneur, a single mom, like we all have shit to work through. We all have unresolved childhood trauma, emotional wounds, different insecurities. And it's really about like stepping in and starting that journey and doing the work. As you do the work on yourself, everything externally will start to change. You're going to start to attract different people, different opportunities. You just need to get started. And for you on your spiritual journey, when you were starting to unpack some of the childhood trauma, what were some of those things that were coming up for you early on in your journey that you had to heal from?
I think when you have a household of fear and you don't know what can happen at any given moment, you start to live your life like that, constantly in fear. You're in fear mode even when there's no threat at any given time, and that shaped me in my relationships and my work and all that. So that stuff from my childhood, it's just ever present. And if you don't, and it influences decisions that you make in life and relationships and friendships and business decisions. And that happened. And in spite of it all, I got pretty successful. I'd like to think that if I didn't have all that stuff growing up, I might have had much larger success at an earlier age. And that's why I think, you see a lot young, I don't know, I have a theory that Mark Zuckerberg, Evan Spiegel from Snap, Elon Musk, that these guys had pretty good childhoods,
Have you heard about Elon's childhood in South Africa?
But his mother did a great job. I know with his father it was challenging, but it's my understanding with his mother it was pretty good. Am I wrong?
Not sure about specifically his mom, but I know he was definitely there's definitely beating and physical abuse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, forget him.
No, but continue.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of these they grew up in really pretty decent households, and therefore their brains were peaceful and happy, and were able to think and grow and have success and abundance at an earlier age. So that's what I wish for everybody. But for me, I had to do it the hard way. I had to run through walls, a lot of fear. For my toll collection company, it literally took over 8 years before I was confident that we weren't going to go under. It took about 8.5 years. Every day I'd walk in. I hope this isn't the day we don't go under. Yeah, it took a long time to turn the corner on that one. Because we went through a lot of stuff. We were growing fast. I had a partner issue, and then growing too fast can be a problem as well.
Yeah,
like a real problem, like a problem with customers on the road and having their cars pulled over because there wasn't enough money in the underlying account on their transponder, like bad stuff. Because we had a cash flow, we'd have cash flow problems all the time. So. Anyway, I think
going back to what you were unpacking first.
Yeah. So in spite of it all, I had success, but with a lot of pounds of flesh along the way.
Right.
Medical issues, failed marriage, all kinds of stuff.
Would you consider that marriage a failure?
I don't think anything's really a failure.
Yeah, because you probably have, it's not like everything that you've touched has turned into gold.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure.
Everything. I don't even like to use the words good or bad, you know?
I'm the same way, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's all serves a purpose, and it went down exactly the way it was meant to be. Exactly. There's no mistakes.
I love that. That's like a really good mindset to have that I feel like I'm doing my best to adopt right now. It's like good and bad doesn't exist, because when I look back at my life, it's the bad moments and experiences, the most challenging obstacles and adversities that I faced that actually turned out to help me become the person that I am today. They helped me evolve my mind and my mindset and my consciousness, and helped me evolve into just a better version of myself. So those weren't actually bad. They were actually amazing. They were really tough at the time. I was going through them. And now I'm able to look back and be like, oh, wow, that was actually the best thing that could have happened for me. So if we can have that mindset, like that hindsight mindset in the present moment, where it's like everything that's happening is like, oh, wow, this is tough. This is a really challenging obstacle. But I know based on my human experience, every single time I've gone through an obstacle, I've transformed it into an opportunity to ascend to a higher level. So I'm just going to approach every bad experience as a valuable lesson to help me elevate and become an even better version of myself.
I think that's really wise, what you're saying, you know, and you're super young to have that perspective. And I think that when people get very, very old, they come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And if we could just accelerate that learning to when we're much younger, I think it would be way better. So, you know, I had my favorite uncle. He died when he was 100, and he was just so. I remember at the time it was Hillary Clinton was running against Donald Trump, and I asked him he was a very smart man. I asked him his opinions, and I thought he was going to be like, yeah, she's this, you know, or he's such a jerk, whatever. And he's like, I've seen it before, you know, it'll happen again. And I want to capture some of that wisdom that super old people have, but at a much earlier age. And I think what you're saying is a great perspective, great way to look at things. More bad things are going to happen along the way. How are we going to roll with them? We always take care of business. Always. We always get it done, right? We wouldn't be sitting here if we didn't get it done. We always make it through to the other side. So how do we want to roll through it? With like the suffering along the way, the anger, the resentment, the sadness, or just take care of business, you know? Yeah. So that's what I aspire. I know the future is not going to be all roses, but I hope that I can navigate my future with just, you know, without all that suffering accompanying it.
So going back to your healing journey, okay, that started 7 or 8 years ago. I want to know, what were some of the modalities that impacted you the most early on? And what were some of the difficult things that came up for you? Because obviously we talked a little bit about the challenges during your childhood, right? And you used all of that pain for fuel to create success and create a new reality, but there were still suppressed things that never actually got addressed at the root cause, right? So I'm curious to know, like, what were some of the really powerful modalities that you implemented early on? Mm-hmm. And what were some of the more challenging things that you had to experience in that process?
Sure. So about 6 years ago, I was introduced to an ashram in India that teaches awakening and consciousness and healing and awareness of conditioning. And we were just finishing up we were doing a lot of Tony Robbins stuff at the time. And ironically, we were on a Tony Robbins experience called spirituality, which wasn't particularly spiritual or healing. It was more hearing speakers and learning about different kinds of spirituality that other people have in India. And so we were in India, and we were on our way home. Did Layla share this story with you?
A little bit.
Yeah. So we were getting ready to go home, and we were in a car with some friends who said they were staying longer to go to this other place, this ashram. And Layla got really emotional out of the blue for no reason. It's like, I must go there. And so I'm like, I'm going home. You can go. So I went home. when she came home a couple weeks later, I noticed a shift in her. Something had changed for the good. And I didn't know if it was going to be temporary or permanent. So I just sort of like watched for about a month. And about a month later, I said, you know what? Maybe I should go check this place out. And did I hear? You can just hit. Just hit stop. Yeah. So when
she stays in India, you come home.
So she comes back. I see a shift in her, and it was for the positive. And I didn't know if it was going to be permanent or temporary. And about a month later, I said, maybe y'all check this place out. This might be good for me. And she started crying because she really, really, really wanted me to go, but she was told, don't even mention anything. Just be the new you. And I went, and I was there for 21 days, and at the end of the 21 days, I did a little mental checklist of all my major traumatic incidents in my life, and there were a couple dozen of them, and I would dwell on them, and I would be like, am I cool with this? The goal is not to like forget, but it's to don't have it resonate with you any longer in a negative way. And I would dwell on it. Am I really, really okay with that thing that happened? Yeah, I'm good. And I went through the checklist, and I did massive healing. That was the beginning, and then I started to get more refined work, like really the shadows, and so I did a lot of work with that ashram. They're called Ekam, and they're located outside of Chennai, about 3 hours outside of Chennai, and then I started working with plant medicines. So ayahuasca, I mean, you name it, I've done it. And that just took me to another level. So the plant medicine work combined with the spiritual foundational work, I think for me has been like the perfect balance and give me a great foundation. So that's sort of where I'm at now. It's still kind of like the combination of both of those things.
Do you have like a consistent practice are there any like daily rituals that you have infused into your routine that just keep you connected? Because I think what happens is a lot of people chase these peak experiences, right? They go on an ayahuasca retreat, they feel awakened for a week or maybe 2 weeks, and then they don't actually integrate all of the things that came through for them, and they resort back to their old habits and patterns, and they don't actually become a product of the medicine. Because the whole intention of the medicine is to show you that you're actually the medicine, right? It's just a reminder of like, you are so divine. You have all of the answers inside of you. And I'm here when you need a reminder, but you don't need a reminder every week or every month, maybe a couple times a year, come pay me a visit, right? But a lot of people are chasing these peak experiences without actually doing the daily work of integrating and implementing these practices. So what are some of the things on a daily basis that you do?
Well, I do have a daily practice, but I'm not so into routine, so I don't get hung up on if I don't do something. But I typically end my day with meditation, with blindfold in bed, with some, good music, and try to get, peaceful and contemplative, and then I wake up the same way. I really try to resist grabbing the phone and like what's going on, text messages, emails, because my cortisol level will go, I don't want to do that to myself. So I really, if there's a practice, it's that. But then at any given point in time, you can catch me meditating, in the middle of the day, in the middle of a mall or in my car, if necessary. I'm like a belly up to the bar kind of guy, bartender, give me a shot of tequila, except in my case, I know when I'm off my center, when I need some grounding, I'm pretty aware of my state, and I know I turn to tools, meditation or otherwise, as necessary as well, in addition to my, call it routine that I do in the morning and nighttime.
Yeah.
And every now and then I'll do a journey, a ceremony, or I'll go on a spiritual trip with a specific topic. It's definitely a part of my life. It's part of the fabric of my life, is this continued dedication to my personal development.
Yeah. How would you describe ayahuasca for someone who is maybe heard about it and they've been feeling the call and they still have a little bit of fear? They've heard about people purging. They've heard about people having their dark night of the soul. How would you explain your experiences with ayahuasca?
So I've done it 14 times. And this is not recreational. I mean, I like the real elementary insights for people. It's not recreational. It's not something you want to do alone. It's something that you most definitely should do with a leader who is very experienced, a shaman, ideally, and it could be one-on-one or it could be in a group environment. I think either one is okay, but you should be led. And it's a drink, and it tastes a lot like a thick Robitussin, and right,
black licorice.
Yeah,
almost.
It's not good. I could taste it now, and it is a psychedelic, and it kicks in after an hour or so, and it's got it's hard to believe it, but it's got a very distinct, stern grandmotherly spirit. You know, a grandmother who loves you like crazy, but is also going to tell you, how it is, and she will show you what you need, not what you want. So you can set an intention for yourself going in, but more often than not, it may not. You're going to be shown things that you really need to see. And for some people, the experience is quite euphoric, and some people it can be quite challenging, and the challenging might actually result in a what they call purging, and purging could look like vomiting in a bucket, or it could be shaking, or it could be laughing uncontrollably.
Yeah.
It could be any of these things, or there might not be any kind of purging at all, and the next experience might be quite different from the previous experience. They might be very different from each other, and I've had incredibly profound, long-lasting, lifelong breakthroughs that I'm very grateful to my experience with that particular medicine. It's not calling me so much at the moment, but each of these medicines is quite different from each other, and serves a different purpose, and the experience is quite different on a physical level as well. But I think that there's great tools, and I'm really hopeful that more and more people get to experience them, because they're really, really powerful.
Have you ever tried acacia?
What is it?
Acacia. Have you heard of this?
No.
This is the next one that I really want to try. It's going to be way more well known in the next 5 or 10 years, but it's known actually as the psychedelic for the Jewish people. So the burning bush, for like when Moses experienced the burning bush, that gave him this direct channel to God and allowed him to part the Red Sea. He was inhaling smoke from an acacia tree. So there's biblical references of psychedelics in plant medicine. And I think that's really interesting. I told you the next person I'm bringing on is this rabbi who is very connected to plant medicine. And I think a lot of times there's this separation between religion and spirituality. I've had Jewish people tell me, you shouldn't need mushrooms to boost your connection with God or elevate your consciousness. All you need is God and the Torah and the Bible. And I understand that perspective. And I also know that my spiritual journey took me to a different place. And these tools have really helped me and many other people actually form that deep connection with God, right? And I think sometimes it's different paths for different people, and I think everything that you shared is really important. I want to actually make sure, I know we have to wrap up here in a second. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I had no idea. Okay, perfect. Rabbi Harry's 15 minutes late. This is amazing.
I gotta go in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I had no idea it was 1:30. Okay. One thing I've never actually asked you about in our conversations, but I'm really curious about, because I think this is also, again, something that humanity really needs right now. I think one of the reasons that America has possibly declined in the last decade or last 20 years in some areas is the family dynamic. And I think at the core of a family, a strong family, is a present father. And now more than ever, we have more women raising their children by themselves. It's almost become normalized and even glorified. There's so many fathers that aren't actually present with their children. And one of the reasons why I admire you so much is, the business success is cool. It's amazing. It's admirable. A lot of people have been successful in business and created a lot of wealth, but there's not a lot of people that have integrated all these different parts, their health, their healing, their spirituality, their business, the way they show up as a husband, the way they show up as a father, than you, genuinely.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, I mean it. So how do you approach, this is crazy because now I'm actually thinking more and more how complex this is, right? Because you grew up in such a chaotic household where you didn't really get the love or attention from either one of your parents, right? You start to have your own kids. You start to build wealth. How do you raise your kids in a way that's providing them love without entitling them? Because you could easily just hand your kids everything, right? Mm-hmm. Very easy. And a lot of wealthy people do that. And guess what? It's oftentimes those kids that end up the most challenged.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, what is your approach and mindset around parenting your children, and how has it shifted the last decade?
So I think, for starters, we need to teach them love and humility and connection. And that's how I want my kids to be, just walking bundles of love and joy and humility. The humility can be taught by sharing experiences with them of charity. My little kids, we've walked through the slums of India. We do a lot of philanthropy, we do a lot of giving, and so we're very hands-on. We don't just like to write checks. We like to actually get involved and have our kids experience that. So Layla and I are very committed to that with our kids. And I also recognize that they're having their own journeys as well, and so I honor and respect their journeys, and we all have our moments, and the kids can be a reflection of our souls. And so when I get triggered by my children, I know, again, I'm trained. Highly trained. I look within myself first, and just set a good example for them of we have a lot of love in my house, a lot. Layla and I aren't constantly kissing on each other in front of the kids.
Yeah.
And that's I just want them, regardless of how they turn out, or the stuff that they have, or maybe they're going to reject our assets. I don't know. I just want them to be really, really happy, and I want them to have a lot of love in their lives and have a lot of humility and caring for other people on this planet.
It's so cool because you have kids that are completely grown, right? And then you have your two daughters that are 10 and 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool to kind of see the transition, right? And as you've transcended yourself, I'm sure the way that you show up for your kids changes as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have 4 kids. My 2 older ones are 27 and 23, and then the 2 boys, and then 2 girls, 10 and 7. And I know that my older ones would say probably that I've changed quite a bit over the years. Definitely the way I show up today is much different than it was when they were little. And I have a beautiful relationship with both of them. And my second eldest in particular is just so full of love. He's 23, and we still will walk down the street holding hands.
Oh wow!
I just love that.
Where's he at now?
He's studying computer science in upstate New York at a place called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI. Oh, wow.
Okay, cool.
It's a really fine school, and he'll be here tomorrow. He's here coming down on spring break. So I think it's
I've
just
met
love. I feel like the answer always is it's just love, and just you can make poor decisions, make mistakes, but if the root of everything is you're operating from a foundation of love, you can do no wrong.
Yeah. And the challenge with that though is a lot of people don't really know how to express love. There's a lot of dads who think, hey, I'm just gonna buy my kid a bunch of shit as an act of love. They turn 15 and a half and get their permit, I'm gonna get them a Maserati, right? Like I'm gonna take them here, take them there. And it comes down, I think, a lot to like intention, because yeah, like just when I look at the way that I was raised, I'm really grateful that, my parents both pretty much came from very humble beginnings. And then my dad was a brain doctor. He started to make some money, not crazy money, but like solid money and smart with investments. And I'm really grateful that like he made my brother and I really work for everything that we have now. Like my first car, I had to buy my mom's Honda CRV from her for like $4,000. You know what I mean? It was really this mindset of like, I'm going to support you and pay for anything that's like going to help to your growth and education. But like, you're also going to have to work to get to where you want to go. And I'll be there for support emotionally and providing that love. But there's something called bread of shame in Kabbalah, which is a really important concept that explains there's a reason why when you look at a lot of kids of people who are ultra successful, who have been handed a lot of things, they end up pretty fucked up mentally. And a big reason for that is this idea of bread of shame. They've received all of this light without actually deserving it, right? Without actually doing anything to receive it, other than be genetically gifted and have this parent who is super successful. And I think oftentimes that breeds resentment because the kids subconsciously are like, they think they're happy because they're receiving this, but at the same time, they're like, wait, does my dad or mom not believe that I can create this myself? Do they feel the need to just hand everything to me on a silver platter? And I think after observing a lot of people who have come from different backgrounds, it's really interesting to see that I think entitlement is oftentimes the biggest disease. And it's coming oftentimes from a place of good intentions, but it doesn't often end like that. You know what I mean? And it's really cool to just see the humility that you're infusing in your kids and the love. There's so much love, man. So much love. Like, that's what every kid needs. They need to witness a mother and father who actually love each other. Because even out of the 45% of marriages that don't end in divorce, a majority of those aren't super happy and fulfilling. So how many kids are actually growing up in 2025 witnessing their mom and dad genuinely love each other and show affection towards one another? Very few.
I think you're right.
Very few.
Yeah.
I know we have to wrap up.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, this was really special for me. And I'm glad we were able to do this. And yeah, man, it's really special to have you in my life. I'm really grateful for it. And
we go back now for a while. I think the connection with you is on your wrist. It's a tattoo. It says Ahava, which in Hebrew means love, which is Layla's Hebrew name as well. So that was one of our first connections that we had.
Yeah,
I remember exactly where we were when we had that discussion.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah.
It was special.
Yeah.
I want to just give you the opportunity, if there's anything that you want to share as a final word, and also share where people can connect with you, connect with your projects. We didn't really talk so much about the Centner Academy or the farm or some of the other really cool things. The Oklahoma land, we didn't even touch on that. We'll maybe have to do a round 2 at some point, but what final message
I think I think it's the podcast. I'd really like your audience to come to our podcast. It's Erased with an exclamation mark, and I think it's going to catch fire, because it's going to be an opportunity for people to come on and share their stories of cancellation. So I would be honored if people come check it out. We have some great guests, and check it out, and hopefully, follow and subscribe. We're going to be on every single platform.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for listening, making it to the end. There you have it, the one and only David Centner. You just got to tap in to this man's mind for the last 90 minutes for free. Leave us a thumbs up on YouTube, rate the show 5 stars, and share this with a friend. Anything that stood out to you, anything that allowed you to have a moment where you're like, oh, wow, this is something that I'm going to take action on in my life. Let David and I know. You can tag me on Instagram at Jeremy Awakens. Thank you so much. Appreciate the love. David Centner.
Thank you, Jeremy.
You're
Love
a fucking legend.
Thank you.
Peace out, y'all. Let's go. You did it. You made it to the end of the show. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your support in listening to this podcast. And really, my mission here is to deliver the best conversations, the best people, so you can continue elevating and becoming the best version of yourself. And all that I ask in return is that you actually take action on the things that we talk about in these conversations, whether it's certain habits to implement or certain thought patterns or belief systems that you want to reprogram and remove from your life. I just want to remind you that your life is your gift, and you are the creator. You are the main character of your movie. So please take action on these things we discussed. And tag me on social media. Tag me on Instagram in your stories at Jeremy Awakens. Let me know what stood out the most to you. Let me know what were some powerful moments for you from this conversation. And finally, if you haven't already done so, it would mean the world if you left a review for the podcast. Word of mouth is our oxygen. This is what allows us to reach more people and impact more lives. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next time.